What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Savvy. Welcome back to the Savvy Show. And again, we got another banger animation from Dr. Bob himself, guys. I've been on a roll lately. No cap. Like, so far, the ones I've been reacting to have been spicy, man. So hopefully this keeps up the heat because you know your boy's ready to eat some more. So this is going to be SCP-280, Eyes in the Dark. So who knows? It could be a ghost or some spirit type SCP. I have no idea. It could be anything, but you already know it's going to be hot, hopefully, because it's from Dr. Bob. He doesn't really miss at all. So, yo, I'm excited. And yeah, it feels like I've been on a marathon right now because I've been catching up, but it's just a good feeling doing with the family. So, with that being said, if you guys do enjoy this reaction along the way, please remember to smash that like button. It takes less than a second and it goes a long way, and it's 100% free. And also remember, join the family if you do enjoy the content, because I'm telling you, if you like SCP content, you like my reaction style, this is the best place to be to get that fix of SCP heat. And don't forget to hit that bell on the way out. So with that being said, without any further ado, let's get this show started. Alrighty, SCP-280, Eyes in the Dark.
The old house has been abandoned for going on 2 decades. And as with any place that's been left uninhabited for this long, rumors tend to spiral. Of course, there are the more mundane explanations for why the 2-story, 4-bedroom home on the end of a nice street lays in semi-ruin.
That's a wide-ass... What the hell? What? Is it just me, or does that look off to you for just being a street? It actually looks like maybe, like, could be like a basketball court type setting. Like, that's a... I don't know. Maybe that's just my head, because there's no cars.
Black mold, asbestos, rising house prices. But those weren't the stories that most people told.
Oh.
Everyone in the neighborhood
Ghost
knew
stories?
what really happened. All those years ago, the family that lived there had been murdered, and their killer was never caught.
Uh-oh.
The 3 young paranormal investigators, with EMF readers in their hands and GoPro cameras mounted on their hard hats, know all about this. They approached the house in the dead of night, mumbling commentary for the recordings.
For
if
the
the
YouTube
old
channel
house really is as haunted as everyone says it is, then they could be in for something really good here. Their subscribers always loved brand new paranormal content.
Alrighty.
They use a crowbar to breach the front door and head inside. It's everything you can expect from a house that had been abandoned for 17 years. Dust, cobwebs, and graffiti abound. Broken bottles scattered across the floor. Someone has scrawled, "Welcome to Hell," above the door in faded Sharpie. It all plays perfectly for the cameras. Paranormal content gold. All of them turn on their flashlights, generously provided to them by one of their sponsors, of course.
Oh my God.
But in this particular situation, they have no idea just how valuable their product really is. After all, there are some frightening things that hide in the dark.
Let's see.
The leader of the trio begins ascending the stairs, narrating into his helmet cam, giving the more popular version of the house's legend. The perfect suburban family, torn apart, literally, by a killer hiding in their home.
They were actually torn apart by a human? I wouldn't think a human would tear someone apart. Sounds more like a SCP, but we shall see.
The family had all been brutally murdered by someone in their home, but the police never found any sign of unlawful entrance or exit. There were no clues to the killer's presence whatsoever, in fact. It was as if they were a ghost, a vapor. It was almost as though whoever killed the family had always been in that house, and even after the murders were committed, they never left the place either.
Ghost type SCP?
As he tells the story, the lead investigator starts to feel a little nervous. Even though he himself doesn't really believe in the supernatural, he just plays up reactions for the views, he still can't help but wonder, should I really be here? Am I making a terrible mistake? Is there a chance that whatever did this all those years ago could still be in the house, waiting for me?
This is what happens when you start believing your own bullshit.
But he pushes those thoughts from his mind.
But in this scenario, he's not wrong, because obviously there's SCP.
This gig is too valuable for him to wimp out now. And really, what are the chances that something actually dangerous would be lurking in the house? The other 2 investigators are still looking around downstairs, sticking together, their flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. Their boss always insists on going upstairs first. He demands the glory shot, after all.
Oh,
that leaves the rest of them searching the downstairs living room, dining room, and kitchen, where the best they can hope for is maybe a particularly haunted-looking dishwasher. It's why the younger of the 2 is so surprised when they suddenly feel something happening to their body that they've never experienced before.
What, period?
In an instant, their whole body convulses with an involuntary shudder.
What the hell?
They feel the temperature drop, and the world gets just that little bit darker. The best way they can describe the feeling is impending doom. Like any moment now, something terrible is going to happen. But almost as soon as the feeling begins, it's gone. Intensity dropping, the dread starting to dissipate, as though whoever or whatever caused this feeling literally passed right through them. Their fellow investigator asks them if they're okay. Of course, they nod and force a smile. They're fine. It's just a spooky place is all.
What? I mean, you guys are making a video, right? This would be actually perfect to talk about in your video to get more views. I'm just saying, like, you guys really felt something. Why don't you guys, add some commentary to it? Like, these guys ain't good YouTubers or whatever kind of tube this is in this universe.
Atmosphere like this would get to anyone. Meanwhile, the lead investigator is exactly where he wants to be, ascending a rickety stepladder up into the attic.
Authentic.
The very same attic where, all those years ago, the police had found what was left of the family. And from everything he'd read on the subject, their remains weren't a pretty sight, even by true crime enthusiast standards. He enters the attic and shines his flashlight around, capturing all the dusty old boxes left to rot in the cold. He's engrossed in the macabre spectacle of what had once been the worst and final moments of a group of strangers' very real lives. The attic is full of spider webs and shadows. They're so ubiquitous that as the lead investigator pauses to tell his camera the next chapter of the grisly tale,
he doesn't
even notice one of the shadows peeling off of the wall behind him.
Oh, God.
It wafts silently towards him, like a gust of midnight air. Little by little, the blob of shadow starts to take on a vaguely human shape. It leans forward in the investigator's direction, arms extended like a classic movie monster.
So it's a spirit,
long,
ghost?
dark claws slide out of its shadowy
Shadow
fingers.
SCP?
Downstairs, the other two investigators hear the most terrible scream. For a moment, the more fantastical thought crosses their minds. Could this be one of the tormented souls of the departed family, longing to be heard after years of silence?
Come on, you guys should figure out if it's your friend screaming or just a random spirit. Come on, you act like this is your first time hearing your friend scream. You guys did all this scary stuff. I'm sure you guys faked it a lot.
Then it occurs to them that they recognize the scream. It belongs to their boss.
Yeah, thank you.
The two of them charge up the stairs, flashlights in hand, as the screaming starts to become more desperate and pained, like that of a wounded animal with its leg caught in a trap. Those terrible wails are echoing down from the open hatch leading into the attic. It's so dark up there, something must have broken his flashlight. That's when they notice something else. Red, dripping from the open hatch. For a moment, they hesitate, wondering what could be going on up there. Could they really help, or would they just be running into the danger themselves? But soon, their desire to save their boss's life overpowers their fear. They grab the ladder and start climbing.
Okay, can't be me. This that's why he's I don't know. Maybe people do have that mentality, like, oh, gotta see my friend, this and that. But when you hear screaming like that and you see blood, like, what are you gonna do? What are you really gonna do? And you're walking up towards it, so it's not like you're descending down to it and you have higher ground or whatever. You're coming into the belly of the beast, bro. Like, it's over. It's over. There's nothing you're gonna do. These guys are gonna get clapped. But it's just crazy how their first instinct was to help when pretty much he's dead. Look at the blood. Can't be me.
Feeling the dripping blood on the worn wooden rungs. When they finally get up into the attic, it feels like the scream is coming from everywhere, bouncing off the walls in a terrible, echoing cacophony of pain. They turn in all directions, hovering their flashlight beams around the room in wide, sweeping arcs, until both fall on the source of all this terror. And when they see it, they can't help but scream too. The lead investigator's body is floating about a foot off the ground, his screams now fading into pained gurgles. Something huge and dark is lifting him up with one hand and sinking the long, dark claws of its other into his neck. The second the twin flashlight beams concentrate on the creature, it drops the lead investigator's bleeding body down onto the ground. His skin slate gray, his feeble twitching slowing to a halt as the last of his life drains from him.
So I guess the SCP doesn't
Two glowing red pinpricks open up in the face of the dark figure. Eyes like terrible, burning coals etching themselves into their memory.
Oh my god.
Like smoke, it continues to glide backwards further.
I thought he was going to pull a Ghost Rider. Like, burn them from the inside. What is it called? Like the Eyes of Justice or something? Like one of his moves? Oh my goodness.
Taking refuge in the dark, a safe haven amongst the other shadows. By this point, the two surviving investigators know there's nothing they can do for their boss anymore. All that's left is to get out and survive. They have to save themselves. They turn, wasting no time running towards the exit. They don't notice it, but the second they turn the beams of their
Oh my
flashlights
God.
away, the Shadow's terrible eyes disappear, and it starts advancing towards them
That's
again.
what I'm saying. Dude, okay, so you guys already realize he doesn't like light, and that's why he hid at the shadows. Why can't when you guys go down, have the light, and why the other one is, you know, on the stairs, she could put her light while you climb down too? Like, come on, bro. Like, I mean, I guess, like, emotions are high and adrenaline's rushing, but you gotta think logical in this situation. I mean, come on. It's life and death.
Its claws outstretched and grasping for them with awful fury.
OV.
The shadow creature grabs at their heads as they make their final leap for the exit.
Wow.
However, all the monster can pull away are their helmets and helmet cams as they scramble down the ladder and then down the stairs,
no
running at
videos.
speeds they didn't even think possible as the shadow slithers down behind them. It doesn't give up. It wants their lives.
Put your life,
As they're
bro.
pouring human blood on its claws. They clear the threshold
These
of the
guys are
accursed house
stupid,
and
bro.
keep running to their car.
And super
One looks over
lucky.
their shoulder and sees the shadow leave the house, gaining on them. Both claws
Flash your
outstretched
light.
and ready to rend their flesh. The two climb into their car.
Your
They see the
headlights?
shadow coming towards their window. It's moving so quickly, only a few feet away now. It's getting closer and closer and closer. Ignition. The car starts up and the driver smashes the pedal down. They take off, quickly accelerating up to illegal speeds as the shadow continues to chase, slowly getting
my
smaller and
God.
smaller in the rearview mirror. A distant nightmare. A terrible, dark ghost. As it finally disappears, they feel a moment of safety. But really, only a moment. Because it occurs to them
Let's
then
see.
that they cannot say, with any confidence, that this monster won't just be waiting for them when they get home. SCP-2...
Honestly, this is one of the first animations that I wish they died. They're just so stupid. I'm sorry. Like, I'm surprised that they survived. Like, for real. They should have died.
Wait Tier, also known as
Too
Eyes
dumb.
in the Dark, is one of the more frightening and dangerous anomalies contained by the SCP Foundation. Of course, it likely won't be causing an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario anytime soon,
no.
but if you happen to run into this nocturnal monster,
scary.
it's likely to cause an end-of-you scenario and remove you from the world with extreme prejudice.
Oh my God, Dr. Bob, watch
There's
out.
no way of telling just how many lives it claimed before the SCP Foundation finally got it into containment, and perhaps it's best to just not think about that. SCP-280 is a black wraith-like apparition that floats at roughly average human height, with no visible legs or feet, as the lower portion of its body simply fades away before it reaches the ground. In its dormant state, the entity may appear to be little more than a shadow, easily dismissed, especially in dark environments. This comes as a natural result of the being's frightening ability to become intangible at will, and only become physical when it enters a state of active aggression toward a human target.
Cool power.
In this intangible state, victims have even been known to walk through the shadowy mass by accident. While this doesn't lead to any detrimental physical effects,
That feeling they
victims
get.
report that being inside the creature can lead to heightened states of anxiety, fear, and dread. Despite its body being wholly composed of an unidentifiable black matter, when exposed to light, the creature does begin to express a pair of glowing dots on its head similar to eyes, hence its frightening nickname. However, all tests indicate that these eyes aren't actually functional. Instead, they appear to be a kind of defensive measure, like false eyes on the carapace of an insect. These eyes are never shown when SCP-280 is advancing towards a victim, only when it is in retreat, though this is only one of the entity's several defensive responses.
Okay.
If an area where the creature is residing becomes fully illuminated, or a sudden flash of extremely bright light is directed against it, then it will immediately dematerialize and appear in a different area.
What if the whole room is illuminated? Where would he go?
The one positive thing that can be said about the hunting patterns of SCP-280 is that they're relatively predictable. The entity, it seems, only has an interest in human beings. When it selects a target, it will pursue them relentlessly, approaching in its intangible form with its arms extended in what many describe as a sleepwalker pose. In this state, you may finally notice 280's claws, long, thin, and razor sharp.
Sheesh.
It may silently approach while the victim is turned the other way, or while they sleep soundly in bed, or even when they're paralyzed in fear at the very sight of it. When SCP-280 closes the distance, it will begin to rip and tear at its victims with its claws, causing massive physical trauma and, in some cases, death. Attacks range from 1 to 5 minutes of being relentlessly clawed at by the beast.
Some
When the
cases.
attack is over, it will simply expose its eyes, become intangible once more, and escape. You will not be able to overpower the creature. Foundation tests have shown that it has extreme physical strength, and it's capable of tearing apart solid steel
Whoa.
with little effort. If it can't find any humans to victimize, then it will simply remain dormant, pressing itself up against a wall, in a dark corner, or within some other structure. Which is why, if ever you feel nervous about a certain dark corner in a room near you, it is best to remove yourself from the situation as quickly as possible and remain in a brightly lit area.
So I guess he just disappears in another room when the whole room is illuminated, just assuming. And that's interesting. I wonder if, well, it says that his victims are only humans, but I wonder if he will become hostile if there's another SCP in the room, or a human-type SCP.
It would perhaps be comforting to believe that SCP-280 is acting on some twisted form of animal instinct. After all, while the results may seem horrific to us, every organism has to eat, right? Well, sadly, that isn't the case here. SCP-280 does not appear to eat, sleep, or breathe to survive.
Wow.
It never consumes any of the matter torn from its victims. The best working theory is that the entity simply enjoys the harm it causes, taking a degree of perverse pleasure in hunting down and murdering its targets.
Wow.
There is no better nature to appeal to here.
Vicious.
The SCP Foundation's ability to study the creature's biology has also been stunted, in part due to the creature's highly aggressive nature, and also the fact that its selective intangibility makes gaining physical samples almost impossible.
How about you use the SCP to do these tests? I'm like, honestly, like, what would be a good example? Get Able to do something. Like, I mean, I think that would be perfect. He listens, and he'll probably do it because he already worked for the SCP Foundation, like, briefly, but I feel like that would be a good scenario to see how this SCP would react to another SCP, because he is kind of human, so I wonder if he will still try to attack Able. But technically, he's not really human.
Even capturing and containing the creature in the first place came partially out of blind luck. It first came to Foundation attention after a series of mysterious locked-door murders in a small Mississippi township. In the most recent case, an entire family had been brutally murdered in their home, leaving only one survivor. A traumatized 9-year-old boy named David, who locked himself in the basement when he started to hear the screaming. He was so terrified by the things he saw that night that he remained in a catatonic state for weeks afterwards.
Why couldn't the SCP kill him then? He just locked himself in the basement. The SCP could just, rip that apart or phase through it to kill him. Unless he really didn't know where the kid was at, but come on.
Completely unresponsive to outside stimulus. But one little detail saved his life. A flashlight was clasped in his white knuckle grip, shining a bright beam of cold, white light onwards.
Smart.
When David was removed and placed into medical care, officers began searching the building for any kind of clues as to how the other 4 family members were murdered. However, during this investigation, the police were just as vulnerable as the victims who'd been so recently slain.
Uh-oh.
While one officer was wandering around the attic, looking for any evidence they may have missed, SCP-280 emerged from the darkness and attacked, tearing into his body with its long, deadly claws. Luckily for the officer in question, he survived the incident, though he was badly wounded. His report on the matter, including the ardent claim that he was attacked by a being, quote, made from black smoke, caught the attention of SCP Foundation operatives embedded in the precinct. They soon took over the investigation and descended on the house, hoping to tag and bag whatever had been behind all these deaths. This would be easier said than done. While Foundation field agents canvassed the home, they simply walked past the creature multiple times, discounting it as a mere shadow. After all, it only had these easily identifiable glowing eyes when it was in a retreating position. Even when it entered its physical state, operatives brushing up against it generally dismissed the sensation as hair, clothing, or some other object touching them in the dark.
They didn't feel like the doom, like the impending doom that those other kids felt?
This already bungled investigation got even worse when the Foundation decided to introduce high-intensity lights into the equation, hopefully flushing the creature out. This, of course, only caused it to dematerialize and appear elsewhere. The chase ended in an almost farcical fashion, a cavalcade of Foundation agents chasing a cloud of sneering black smoke across a Mississippi field at 2:30 a.m. Thankfully for the human race, the entity was, at the very least, eventually secured and contained. However, this wouldn't be the last time it was out of containment. During a series of tests with different types of illumination, intending to test SCP-280's reflexes, it disappeared from its chamber.
Yeah.
It seemed almost to sink through the different levels of the illuminated site before coming to rest at the containment chamber holding SCP-1591.
Uh-oh.
This made for a fascinating accidental cross-test.
Let's see.
You see, SCP-1591, to put it simply, is a unique sculpture of a star that emits an incredibly bright light. And this light will slowly make any being subject to its glow intangible before disappearing completely. When SCP-280 came before SCP-1591, it displayed its eyes, but did not retreat. In fact, it assumed a kneeling position and simply remained before the anomalous sculpture until it faded from existence. It then remanifested in its own containment chamber several hours later without incident. All things considered, it went pretty well, as far as containment breaches involving deadly, human-hating monsters go. Because of its ability to demanifest and phase through solid objects, SCP-280 is incredibly difficult to contain, earning it the dreaded Keter object class. In order to avoid the risk of demanifestation, SCP-280 is contained in a 5x5 meter cell that is perpetually left in a state of total darkness. No equipment is to be left in the cell unsupervised at any time, and any items brought into the cell for testing must be removed when the testing is complete. Any staff members entering the chamber for tests must be equipped with infrared goggles, an infrared ID strobe, and also a strong flashlight to ward the creature off in the case that it becomes aggressive. If SCP-280 does attempt to attack anyone in the chamber, all attending staff are instructed to turn on their flashlights and turn the beams against the creature.
Smart.
No aggressive action is permitted, and staff members must remain at least 1 meter away from SCP-280 at all times for their own safety.
This SCP isn't really, well, it looks scary, but it's not even that hard to deal with. Just, it's very simple to neutralize it. Well, not neutralize it, but like halt it. Just put light on it. Just can't be goofy like those two people in the beginning.
And if you suddenly feel yourself getting a little nervous in an eerily dark room, I'd like you to remember this. The one thing more frightening than seeing eyes in the dark is not seeing them. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-015-IT, the Boogeyman, for another terrifying anomaly that you may encounter lurking in the dark.
Okay.
And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.
Damn, this was a cool one. That was cool. It's an older one too, 280. But yeah, definitely gave me some vibes for like the Boogeyman type SCP, just aesthetic appeal though, not like the abilities. But wow, yeah, it's interesting to see that this creature just likes to kill just to kill. Most of the time you see them doing this because they need to eat or, you know, breed or something, but this guy's just doing it because he likes it. And it's funny that it says eyes in the dark, but it only really shows his eyes when he's in a defensive position, so when there's light. So technically he's not really always in the dark. I just thought that was something to point out. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the reaction, please let me know by smashing that like button. Let's try to get 100 likes, and also smash the sub button and then hit that bell so you don't miss an upload. And now, unfortunately, that concludes today's episode. However, I'll catch you guys on the next one.